Okay, hello everybody. Today is September 10th and this is the OLM Dev Working Group meeting. Today we'll be talking about default channel override support status, and it links to an issue 330. We'll be discussing some new features that are coming to upstream and also discussing various dependency resolution scenarios. And lastly, we'll be announcing a new meeting that we're planning where we'll discuss feature development for the upcoming sprint. So lots of exciting things to discuss, and we'll jump on it now. Cool. So the first item on the agenda, default channel override support status, was submitted by Chris. Chris, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
I can.
Okay. Yeah, so as usual, because the agenda was empty, I went ahead and populated it with stuff before you got on. So I'm a broken record on this one. So last week we talked about, or 2 weeks ago we talked about this, and I think folks agreed that this is needed until the rest of the dependency management stuff is all done and in. And so we still need the ability to override the default channel. And so I think Kevin, last week, he said you're going to try to prioritize that. I also had talked to Daniel, Daniel from Red Hat, and he said that he was going to try to prioritize it at some point within the OCP releases here too. So I'm just wondering where you were at with that.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I'm gonna we'll circle back on the status update. I'm just gonna move this around so I can actually bring this thing up. One of the things that we've kind of noticed is that it's difficult for us to communicate what's actually getting working on in the upstream community, right? Like we know internally like what we're working on and what's planned and when we're pulling things in. And in an effort to alleviate some of this pain, for our upstream contributors and users like yourself, is to actually schedule a meeting where we go over what we're doing, who needs to do what, and assigning those tasks. So we'll be doing an announcement email later this week where we'll make that whole meeting apparent so that we can actually not only just discuss the issues at hand, but also like work on figuring out, making it apparent when fixes are going to land. Other than that, Kevin, do you want to take over?
Yeah, so I mean, I think we've talked a bunch about specifically this default channel issue. I think we have sort of two different concurrent pieces of work that are actively being looked at right now to try to deal with that. So first is, I think, sort of a larger effort that we have been talking about for a while now. I think there's an initial enhancement that sort of describes some of how we think we might want to do this. But we have this concept of a declarative index configuration, which basically, so on top of OPM's insert commands, basically, we would have something like a JSON object that would define all of the channel and package level information that exists for the entire index, and basically allow you to read that thing out and then modify it and then pass it back in with OPM to build a new version of the index, which is basically the same except for whatever changes you made to that declarative index. So I think that is sort of like the direction that the project seems like it wants to go to solve not just that specifically default channel problem, but also problems generally like that. So that being said, I think effort around solving a problem of that scope is probably going to take a moderate amount of effort and not going to drop, in a couple of days. So in the meantime, we were talking about potentially doing something slightly more tactical, where certain things that various pipelines that may not be able to necessarily pull onto their plates of like, now I need to go implement using this thing and it's fairly complex. In the short term, just add a few registry modification commands. So default channel is one example of that, right? If we just implement a command that for now just modifies the default channel for a given package, that probably solves this problem for just about everybody at the moment.
Yep.
So I mean, I think that those are kind of both in flight at the moment. It's just a matter of like when things can get prioritized and start to actually get worked on.
I think we should probably figure out exactly, and you probably went over this before, and I'm sorry, Chris, for forcing you to repeat it multiple times, but which versions downstream you expect this to be accessible or usable in, and if it is anything less than the latest version of downstream OCP, then we'll have to classify or try to classify whatever it is as a bug fix, which will be difficult to frame if it's a user-facing command. The alternative, which we were just literally talking about it before this, and I think Kevin talked about it before, of solution instead of an alternate command is just to run up to the latest bundle in a package across all the channels, the thing that all of the replaces or 7.4 eventually will point to, and take the default channel from that. So that'll at least make it the OPM index add command order independent, which I think is the crux of the problem.
It is the problem. We just need to make sure that, if I heard you right, I think what you're saying is use the latest version of OPM to generate a catalog index image, and then use that catalog index image on older versions of OLM. Right?
I don't think.
Well, what I was saying is, if you have the requirement that the OPM that you're using matches the version of OCP for downstream, then we would have to classify whatever fix we do as a backport in the internal process, which is easier to do if it is like correcting some behavior under the hood, rather than exposing a brand new command. Now, we don't really have a downstream release process for OPM, but we do have parts of it that are packaged with OLM. So you,
we do. We have. Well, the process is you pull it out of the registry image.
Sure. Yeah. If that's the process. We don't
expose the binaries by itself. Yeah.
Yeah. So if we want to treat it as a backport like that, then the thing that I suggested, I think, is probably the best bet as a solution, rather than like a command to alter the channel that we then have to keep around forever.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good like stopgap, potentially work around for this problem. I have some questions about what the UX for something like that is going to end up feeling like. And I want to be careful, because that is removing a sort of like the ability to go and modify this package level metadata in some ways, like depending on how you craft it. So we should be careful about that. I don't know if we could potentially have a way of making it so that's like not a default behavior, or maybe if it is a default behavior, allowing some like sane opt-out. I don't know if that makes sense.
So,
but yeah, it probably makes sense. I think we should think about all the edge cases.
Yeah, I mean, this has been stagnating a lot, particularly because of our will to build our ultimate solution. But it may be worth for downstream users to file a bug now. Probably not a release blocker, but at least a bug, so that we can put it through the backport process and like track it as something internally downstream that needs to be done.
Yep. Okay. So yeah, we do need this in 4.5, because that's where all of our products are right now, fully GA'd and fully supported by us, and so and they're going to be on there, and for quite some time. So that would be, I will go ahead and create Bugzillas for that, or cases. So we could facilitate that.
Okay, yeah, that should definitely get the ball rolling on the short term, like air quotes fix for that, because it's been you know, too long. You've been sitting here waiting.
Perfect. All right.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
And then, you know, the next thing we already went over. So we already talked about the new future planning meeting announcement. So there will be an email coming up where we include more details about that meeting and what to expect. Hopefully that will make it clear when work is actually in the near deliverable future. The next item that we wanted to bring up was clarification of some new features coming upstream and the operator signals upgrade readiness is the first one. So Chris, please.
Yeah. So these are basically some bullet points that I saw in some presentations from OpenShift that are things that are coming like within the next year. And so some of these I couldn't readily find features and enhancements for upstream. So I just wanted to find out, and we talked a little bit about some of this. I'm just bringing a few of these forward that I couldn't find. So the operator signals upgrade readiness is one of the bullets. And so my understanding of that one is basically allowing the operator to be able to establish when a critical section is coming, so somebody doesn't upgrade it when it's in the middle of migrating something else, for example. And so that's super important to us, so that would be awesome. Okay, so I see a pull request.
Isn't that merged?
Oh, yeah.
You just probably point to the doc.
Yeah, that's a good point. Sorry.
Okay, so that's a short one then. Cool.
Yeah,
so I think my assumption is correct there.
Yeah, it's all good. We might append it so that instead of just not, right now the only condition we say we're going to support is upgrade readiness. We're also probably going to add a condition called ready, so that we're no longer looking at the readiness signal to like gauge an operator's readiness, simply because we ran into some problems recently with that. So that will just override that check that we do there. But yeah, so let me just update the. You can ask your next question. I'm going to just update that link.
Yeah, if you could just update whatever you just said in that bullet while we're reacting, that'd be great. The next one I noticed is this thing called Smart Auto Updates, which I think is a hybrid of the automatic and manual update process for install plans. So can you tell me if that's what I think that is basically if you have SemVer knowledge, you can do automatic Z upgrades, but then you can do manual X.Y upgrades. Is that what that means?
So I'm not sure where this came from specifically. I don't think there's anything. Yeah, no, I don't know like what like documentation or what specifically was said here. Just for your own awareness, like I don't think any of us have any explicit design in mind for this. If I could talk about where I think I'm imagining this concept comes from, it's we have a lot of users on OLM have a lot of different opinions and disagreements on what it means to put operators in specific update channels. I think that like if you look at the original intention of that feature, it was more around update frequency, which is I think kind of what this is describing, just in a different sense, a different perspective, sort of like if there were controls on basically if there were either explicit channels that were automatically baked into each operator, or there were separate controls on the subscription of automatically pull in Z-Stream updates without bumping minor versions. That's probably similar to the concept that we see a lot of our operators using, which is they basically put a minor version channel on each of their for each of their bundle sets, and then they have to worry about figuring out how to create the edge between like the latest Z stream of a channel to the next channel. and if that was more like a first class thing, it would probably be a lot easier for users to grok and to use.
Yep.
I think that that's probably what that is. I don't know that we have any explicit design or plans to make that happen like in the next, like the next few months. But it is certainly something like I've had conversations with people about. I think it makes sense personally.
Okay, so so how can we find out more details of what they're thinking there? I guess.
I mean, you could bother me on Slack. I don't know. If you mean like product management for
well, yeah, I'm just wondering. So clearly, yeah, product management has an idea of what they want to do here. So they've got some kind of requirement which they haven't talked to the architects about yet, which is always interesting.
Yeah, well, so I think hopefully, like this is probably a really good example of like the fact that the plans that we're trying to get rid of with this meeting that Bets mentioned earlier in the call. That I think one of the things we want to do is right now we track all of our stuff in a private Jira instance. We're trying to make that public. And so anything like that is pretty explicit about like what we're trying to deliver in like what order. Like we basically have like a backlog of things that we want to work on, and then those things get prioritized. The closer those are to the top and the more detail they have in them, that's the closer they are to like a real agreement between PM and dev around like what we're going to actually do. I think if you were to look at that Jira, you'd look at this list that you have here. The first item on the list is literally something that's like right near the top, and it's something we're going to work on soon. The second item you have on this list is not. So I'm hoping like the combination of that meeting and like eventually once we have a public instance of our planning board, that'll be much, much, much more obvious. If that's helpful or unhelpful, I'm not sure, but.
All right, so I will re-raise this in the new meetings that we have once we see what's going on in here.
I mean, I would say that even though we don't have specific plans around whatever this feature is supposed to be, I see further down that you have some thoughts around like what sort of dependency resolution and updates stuff you want. And so I think that's a perfectly reasonable thing to discuss. And then, that the stuff that we do upstream may or may not end up going downstream, but if upstream users need something, that's certainly what this meeting is for, right?
Yeah, and I totally agree. And I also think like if folks on the call have opinions or thoughts about this particular bullet point, we should probably focus the call on just like talking about those things. I think that's really valuable.
And with the new channel, the development channel in Slack, along with this meeting where we're, publicly talking about like what features we're going to develop, if people want to actually start working on features in the upstream community, we would be happy to support you with that too.
That's fine. I just wanted to, for this one, I just wanted to find out if there was a feature backing this so I could correlate the two things together. That's really all I'm looking for. So like the next one, the new operator API, there's supposed to be this new read-only API coming out called operator. So it sounds like that's basically the simplification of the API feature that's coming out, but they're just making the operator read-only instead of read-write for the time being. To kind of, I think it's kind of like a tech preview of what's coming. Is that accurate?
Nick can speak to this more, but there is an actual like tech preview version of the operator API, I think in 4.5, and then in 4.6 it's available, and you can look like OC get operators or kubectl get operators, and it will work in 4.6.
Yeah. So it is public. It is available by default in OpenShift 4.6 and also in the latest master release
16.1
upstream OLM. Yeah, it is read only at the moment. We don't do anything with it. It is more about bubbling up aggregate status of all the various components that comprise an operator install and upgrade workflow currently in OLM. I think there is an enhancement that is merged that exists that talks about the further future of that API.
Yep.
If you're interested in reading that, or if you've already read it, I'm not sure. But
No, I've already. I just wanted just to correlate the two together and just find out where that was at. And
yep. Yeah, no, so it's read it is read only as of right now, and there's more work to be done there.
Yep. Okay. Then the next thing was mine too. So more with dependency resolution. So last time we talked about the new label feature that was kind of dark launched, I guess, as part of the dependency resolution work that was done. So we've got basically, GVK. We've got semver operator range lookup, and now we've got labels. There's no groups for those yet, so you can't combine them. So the labels have to be very fine grained. You can't just call it EUS or LTS, because then you'll get anything resolved to it. So there's those three things. Then plus we have frequency, right, which we talked about before, Evan. I think I had requested a feature a while ago about doing channels, and kind of step back from that. It's like, oh, maybe channels are just a means to an end. They're not really what we want to do. Really want to separate out frequencies from semvers. So are you guys still working on, I mean, I've seen some designs out there that are now kind of old. Is there still work to enhance I think I saw some group work happening to be able to basically take the three things you've got out there and be able to group them together, saying, I want to make sure I install dependency that has, that's greater than version 1, also has the favors a label of SLA, or favors a label of like EUS in it or LTS, and has this API. Is that coming?
Yeah, it definitely is. I think if you saw a PR, I had a PR up that sort of implemented this. There was a bunch of consternation and disagreement about the format of the syntax of the object that we were passing in and how it would be propagated to the database. And so that's why that kind of sat and has not been picked up again yet. But
okay.
it was in progress, and it's going to, once we, start focusing on that again a little bit more, I think that's something we want to do and something we probably want to plan to do soon.
Yeah, so we're starting to rely more and more and more on dependency management. And so there's going to be I'm decomposing all of our scenarios and collecting them right now. I'm going to try to give them to you guys in a very concise way. And I think this will achieve probably about 75% of the use cases, but we still have the problem of upgrade. And especially when we've got these clusters that are massively reusing the same componentry, and we need to do some resolution even after things are started. So like doing auto upgrade scenarios when it's safe to do so, especially even when they go span channels, like moving from a fast channel to a stable channel. So in this work, so I guess two questions. One, in this work, are you thinking about frequencies? Because we talked about frequency weighting. Remember that conversation, Evan, where we talked about it, like baking into some kind of labeling, so you had kind of some weight where stable would be favored over fast, fast would be weighted over beta, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think I still think that channels are a good abstraction for frequency. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that maps to what people expect from the word channel. And then the thing that's missing is exactly what you're saying, being able to specify a weight to each one. That will, this also obviates the need for a default channel, right? Because there'll just be an ordered list of channels, and we'll walk through them to find whatever thing matches first. That's definitely also on the table soon.
So is that in any particular, I hadn't seen that particular nuance in any of the design docs. So is that something you guys are just kind of toying with in the back of your minds, or is this something that it's officially kind of?
In my opinion, it's like a miss on the new resolver that it didn't ship with that, because it should be able to. I think if I remember correctly, it falls back to lexicographic sort on channel name just to have determinism, but I don't think that is actually what we want for that.
Right.
So yeah, it's definitely, I don't know that it's written down anywhere other than in some of like maybe the Google Docs about the dependency resolution. But.
Yeah, so maybe what I'll do is I'm going to collect my requirements and then reference through Google Docs and feed them to you guys. You can kind of make sure that that the plans are going to satisfy that at some point. That'd be awesome. All right. That's all I had. I know Joe had something after me here.
That's kind of an interesting problem. We're talking about channels, but in the new world of the new resolver, we kind of want to think about these things as just properties of a bundle that you can constrain over. And so what that means is that basically any new constraint that we think about adding, and like we've had discussions around like how do we open up the constraint system so that an advanced user could make their own type of constraints. And one of the problems with that is that if we do that, we also need to have some way for them to tell us how to sort things, right? How to prioritize things so that you get a deterministic answer in the way you want. So,
yep. Cool.
All right. Want me to talk about the agenda item I added? I'll take that as a yes.
Go for it. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so in the operator SDK, we have this EDE test that runs this run package manifest command. And the way that works under the hood is that we create a bunch of config maps that end up basically recreating a package manifest directory structure. And then we mount that into a registry server builder pod, and then run a custom entry point that builds the database and then serves the database. And once that's all running, we create the catalog source that connects to that registry pod. And now we have kind of an on-the-fly registry server / catalog source built from our existing operator project based on package manifests. We create a subscription and OLM installs it. So we're like, cool, okay, tear that all down. Now let's tweak the CSV. We change the install mode. We're basically trying to test that our run package manifest command works with different install modes on the operator. So we tear the first one down. Let's say it was installed with install mode all namespaces, change the CSV locally to support only own namespace, and then recreate the exact same scenario. So we rebuild the registry pod, recreate the catalog source, recreate the subscription. And we're seeing this issue where the CSV fails saying, I'm sorry, like you don't support the install modes that this package supports. So I talked with the OLM team a little bit about this already, and it seems like we know what the root cause is, but I just wanted to bring it up and talk about it and see if there's any update. But it sounds like there's basically a caching issue and not invalidating a cache in the latest version of OLM. So I'm wondering, A, if there's a workaround that you would suggest to let us basically keep testing with the latest versions of OLM. Right now we've pinned this particular test to use OLM 0.15. So yeah, just want to see what the status is on this.
So this is Vo, so I can talk a little bit about this because I think Evan and I was the first one talking to Joe about this, and I having a lengthy discussion with Ben Luddy, who is not here today, about this as well. So the issue you're having is basically with a cache issue, and the fact that you create a catalog source, and then obviously when you create a catalog source, the information of the catalog source will be cached, and then you delete it, and you recreate it with the updated contents within it. And at the moment, the cache that we have only having basically essentially two mechanisms to do the sync process, the resync process. The first of all is just the standard time sync every 5 minutes or so. It will be resync the cache if nothing happening. Another way to sync the cache is if a catalog source become ready, the gRPC status become ready. then it will basically sync the cache again. But there's no mechanism to clean the stale resources, the stale contents. And at the fact that you're reusing the same catalog source name on the same namespace. So essentially, when the resolution happening, when the stale info is still there, then it will result in something differently than what you expected. And the fact that when you create a catalog source, it does take a bit of time for the part to become ready, essentially for the gRPC connection to become ready. It can be surprisingly long in some cases, unfortunately. So until that started become ready, the cache still having the stale content. So the immediate fix for this, not fix, but workaround is make sure that the gRPC started become ready before you actually do any further, like create a subscription or anything like that, that trigger the resolution. So that needs to be wait. So that's the immediate fix for that, and fix, but workaround for that. And Ben and I had a lengthy conversation about how we can address this for the future in a way that, given the fact we don't have any custom mechanism to actually trigger the sync process, we're just having sort of limited option here, either time or the ready status. So we need to have some sort of a more aggressive strategy on how to trigger the resync. That's one way to do it.
I wonder if it would, and you can tell me if this totally doesn't make sense, but I wonder, so part of what we are doing in this test scenario is we delete the catalog source entirely. So I'm wondering if that should trigger, it seems like us deleting the catalog source should trigger the package server to basically invalidate and remove that content from its cache.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying about aggressive strategy, about how we clean up, sync the cache. Because if there are more ways for us to trigger the sync process, then deleting something can basically doing that. When it resync, when it's checking that, that catalog source name doesn't exist anymore, it should clean up stuff up, essentially. Basically, like flush out the existing content and to pulling everything again, or something in a similar fashion.
Did you say the cache was indexed off the catalog source name? So would another workaround be to create the catalog source with some dynamic name each time?
Yeah, so essentially the way we indexing it, I put that in quotation, is basically the name of the catalog source and the namespace. That's how we distinguish.
So for the testing, if each time the catalog source was being created had a new dynamic suffix on the name, wouldn't that avoid the problem?
Yeah, so if you create a different catalog source with different name, then obviously the contents will be in a new index, cache with a different index. But again, we do need the name of the catalog source and the namespace to able to query stuff later on. So that's the problem there, that we need to make sure that the name of the catalog source is something that we can retry later, and using it for the later, because the cache is to holding bundle contents, but at the same time we do some further query to getting certain like default channel information and other stuff as well. Not just the bundle content is something that we use for resolution, but there are further information that we may want to query further on.
Okay, so I'm hearing there's two workarounds that we could do. One would be just use a different name for each catalog source we create. So the first one, we put a random string on the end, clean that up. The second one, we put a different random string on the end, clean that up. And then that should all work. And eventually, we don't necessarily care at this point, but eventually the package server will clear out the cache from the things that got deleted in the previous runs.
Yeah, I would think so. So obviously you can always create a different catalog source with different name to make sure that the basic identifier is unique. But at the same time, if you're doing that in your test case, you need to create a subscription that subscribe to a correct catalog source name.
Yeah, which that's totally fine for our case.
Yeah, so you can do that as well. But obviously for testing, it sounds cool, but it sounds fine. But for the realistic uses, yeah.
I think even in our case, so we're basically testing our run package manifest command in the operator SDK. So what we could probably do is have the run package manifest command automatically do a random name for the catalog source. And then as part of the same command, we're just creating a subscription right after we create the catalog source. So we know what our catalog source name is when we create the subscription. So I think what I'm hearing you say is there's the simple workaround of just using a different name. And if we had started with a random string for the catalog source, we never would have encountered this bug in the first place, and we'd be none the wiser, which we can change to that probably. No
Yeah,
problem.
you just need to add some random string number in the end of class of name. That should fix the job. Or you can literally create a new namespace if you want to. That's also work as well.
Right.
So
but go ahead.
The other workaround that I heard about in Slack was, sorry, I don't know if you mentioned this already, but waiting until the catalog source has a ready status, which will invalidate the cache.
Yeah, that also works as well. But that requires you to checking for the status of the gRPC connection.
So
in
this particular case, we are actually going to do that anyway. Right now, it's not working because OLM doesn't propagate the ready status of the catalog source quickly enough. So I've noticed that when looking at OLM's logs, I think in the package server pods. No, sorry, it's in the catalog source pods. The catalog operator pods. You see that the catalog source is ready well before, like 2 minutes before the catalog source's status gets updated with ready. And so the wait will time out unless you put a timeout in for like 4 minutes or something.
Yeah,
and so we currently can't wait on the catalog source.
Yeah, so the time variation of the update status is sometimes can be unpredictable, and that's why I'm saying that waiting sometimes can be tricky. It can be like even for the status itself to be ready, sometimes it can be take a few minutes. Sometimes it take like 30 seconds, 10 seconds. It can be the gRPC status can be a bit flickering sometimes depending on the environment you're testing on. So that is something you can do, but it's not reliable, as Eric just said. So that's why we try to improve the cache situation to be something a bit more intuitive in a way that it doesn't have to rely on somebody to checking on some status somewhere that you have to rely on. It's not really something that a cache should do, or anyone using should do. But
yeah, like I understand that, and invalidating a cache by changing a key, obviously makes sense and probably more sense than this. I'm just trying to figure out why it takes like 2 minutes at least for this to happen on like a pretty beefy cluster even. Like when you are waiting on a pod status, for example, for a pod to be ready, typically takes, I don't know, not that long. And I don't imagine that catalog source reconciliation takes that long if OLM is already saying that the catalog source is ready in its own logs. Why does that take so long to propagate to the catalog source?
Eric, let me ask a question that may highlight. So in this case, when we create a catalog source and then create a subscription, are you seeing the behavior where OLM will start reconciling the subscription and start creating an install plan and doing things based on a catalog source whose status says it's not yet ready?
Yes.
Okay. So it seems like we should be able to solve that problem.
So, so there was a bug long time ago. We're talking about ancient time here. That for some reason during the last update cycle of the catalog source, the status is not propagated correctly for some reason. So it's still stuck in pending state instead of being ready, even though the log showing itself being ready. And I'm not sure if that bug will actually been addressed or we maybe fix that and it's not really completely fixed. So that I cannot answer right now at the moment, but that's something we can actually look into to see why there's such a gap in the timing between the log reporting that the gRPC connection is ready, but the catalog source status is still remaining and pending. So that's something we can look into to see if that's the issue that can improving the situation that you can rely on checking the catalog source status to determine if you can begin to create a subscription or not. That's something we can look into. And that's probably going to be a bug somewhere. So we can look into that. But in the meantime, I guess create a new catalog source with the new name should at least address the intermediate problem here. In the meantime, we can probably need to think of a way to make the cache a bit more, easier to, a bit more flexible that way. And I having a lengthy discussion with Ben on this, and he told me that he will documenting this in some documentation somewhere so we can discuss further. And I will check with him again to see if the doc is available so we can sharing to everyone here. I will post that on Slack somewhere so we can having some discussion about how to improving the cache. and I would love to hear some feedback from you guys, at the community. That would be lovely.
Okay.
But I will get the dog out for sure.
So long story short, we do have a workaround right now, which is invalidating cache by key. And then was there a GitHub issue related to this the status not being propagated quickly?
No, at the moment I don't recall so.
Okay.
Eric,
I can make one just for tracking purposes.
Yeah, Eric, if you can go ahead and create one, I will look into it to see if I can reproducing this and see what the root cause is.
Okay. Thanks.
As I think probably, barring a longer discussion about the cache, it does probably make sense to just always invalidate the cache when the catalog source is deleted. I think that would also solve this bug for the short term as well.
Yeah, I would talk to Ben with this. I'm not sure why he's not here today. And see if we can having some more, immediate term, short term fix that can be create some, give some good benefit here, so we can address at the box, and we can discuss the long term fix later on, of course.
I'm curious, and this is probably something that I won't do, but I'm just curious. Another way to invalidate the cache would be to delete the pod that has the cache in memory. What's the component that has this cache?
That is the operator.
The catalog operator?
Catalog operator.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no good way for us to do that.
Well, I could do it, right? Like I could just go find the deployment.
Yeah, you could. Whether or not that's faster is questionable, yeah.
Yeah. Well, if someone encounters this issue and they say they don't want to rename the catalog source for some reason, I can tell them that that's basically where this is. And if you just kill that pod and the deployment recreates it, it'll resync and you're good to go.
Yeah, that should work.
Yeah, so I think that's one reason why I didn't want to bring up the whole create a new catalog source with a new name, because in some upgrade scenario, create a new catalog source is require you to create a new subscription. So that's not really an upgrade scenario at all. Right. It's more like a brand new installation of an operator. So if
but can't you, in that case though, can't you just create the new catalog source and then update the subscription to point to the new catalog? This is quote unquote a new catalog at that point.
Yeah, you can do that, but again, it's, you have to go too many loops.
Yeah, that's true. It's not great UX.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool, thanks guys.
Cool, so I believe that was everything that we had on the agenda. Unless anybody has anything else they want to add, we can end the meeting early. Okay, cool. Everybody, thank you for joining us today, and hope you have a good rest of your week.